Welcome back to Frank Speaks. Good to have you here again. In this very video, we're out to tell the story of Clarence Moses. This is Clarence Moses, a man who was sentenced to 48 years in prison because one woman accused him of raping her in her dream. In 1988, Clarence was arrested by the police as a rape suspect. A hospitalized woman claimed she had been brutally raped by a black man. This woman had returned home drunk and woke up with bruises the next day, with no evidence for how she ended up with the bruises or how someone raped her. She accused Clarence of raping her. More than a day after the assault, while in the hospital, the woman identified Clarence as her attacker, saying his face came to her in a dream. Clarence Moses was convicted and sentenced to 48 years in prison for raping and assaulting a woman when she returned home from a night of drinking. Despite no further evidence other than her bruises and her dream, Clarence had long claimed he was innocent, but his efforts to appeal his convictions were unsuccessful, in part because Denver police threw away DNA evidence from the scenes, according to reports. Luckily, in December of 2013, while serving his 48 years prison sentence, Clarence received a letter from another man, L.C. Jackson. In the letter, Jackson said he couldn't believe Clarence has been accused of raping the same woman Jackson had sex with every same night. Jackson wrote, "I really don't know what to say to you, but let's start by bringing what was done in the dark into the light." Jackson wrote, "According to court documents, I have a lot on my heart." This confession later led to a court hearing in July of the same year, where Jackson testified that he lost his temper during sex with the woman and hit her in the face. He admitted to it all, although it wasn't necessarily a rape. Clarence had already spent 28 years of his 48-year sentence in prison. In February of 2019, Colorado Attorney General Phil announced that he will not oppose a man's petition for exoneration after he served nearly 30 years in prison for a crime the man says he did not commit. Clarence Moses said he was surprised and delighted by the news, "Because I woke up this morning with the phone calls of good news. So I have been in a very pleasant, relaxed state," Moses said. Clarence was sentenced to 48 years in prison after being convicted in 1987 rape and assault, crimes that Moses had repeatedly denied he committed. In 2015, Moses was released from prison after a judge granted him a new trial and said her decision was based in part of the confession of another man to the sexual assault. In 2016, a jury acquitted Moses of all crimes in the case. Phil's decision brings the state's case to an end and allows Moses to receive about $2 million in compensation for the nearly 3 decades he spent in prison. The Colorado Exoneration Act gives wrongly convicted individuals $70,000 for each year they spent behind bars. Moses said the funds will help him regain the sense of dignity he had lost. "That's another reason I'm happy, because it allows me to regain a lot of things that meant so much to me, so dear to me, that now having possession of these things again, it makes me feel like a full person," he said. Former Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman argued that Moses' case did not qualify him for compensation from the state for the wrongful conviction. In November, however, she filed a motion in court to delay a civil lawsuit Moses had filed against the state, and in doing so, allowed incoming Attorney General Phil to make his own determination if the state would stand in the way of his compensation. In the late 80s, Denver police destroyed DNA evidence in the case. Moses said the victim forcefully identified him as her attacker. Phil said at a news conference that Colorado needs to compensate Moses because it destroyed the DNA that could have exonerated him. "I am aware of the pain that the victim have endured over the years, and that the destruction of DNA evidence prolonged his case unnecessarily," Phil said. Moses is the second person to be exonerated and receive compensation under the 2013 law meant to help ease wrongfully convicted individual back into society. According to a statement released by one of the Moses attorneys, Mr. Moses is grateful to the Attorney General for working to heal the harm that has been done to him by the state of Colorado, said Gail Johnson, one of the Moses lawyers. Although no amount of money can give Mr. Moses back the half of his life that was lost to the Colorado prison system, this compensation will help him and his family recover from this traumatic ordeal. Field's decision resolved the criminal case, but it does not resolve a pending lawsuit Moses filed against the state and county of Denver, the Denver District Attorney's Office, and others. Eric, another attorney of Clarence, said that the compensation from the state is a great start. The state's compensation states you really cannot even begin to compensate for spending almost 3 decades in prison for a crime he did not commit, Eric said. We feel that people who are responsible for that should be held accountable, and that should be something that should make government actors in the future to make sure this does not happen to anybody else. The victim of a brutal rape and assault in 5 Points over 30 years ago has asked the judge to let her voice be heard, a day after the state agreed to compensate the man she maintains was her attacker. In a motion filed by Attorney Stanley in Denver court, the victim, refers to as TS, is protesting the exoneration and the pending payment to Clarence Moses, who was convicted of the crimes in 1987. The victim, TS, had been consistent from the very beginning that the petitioner in this case was her assailant, and she knows that to this day. Gannett wrote in the motion, "This motion comes to 1 day after Attorney General Philly announced the state would not contest the Moses petition for compensation under the Colorado Exoneration Act." Phil called the case a travesty of justice. Gannett argued that the victim has a constitutional right to be heard by a court under the Victims' Rights Amendment. The victim, he wrote, wishes to submit a statement of up to 10 pages for the court to consider before final resolution of the case. She wishes to be heard regarding the exoneration of the petitioner and payment to him of millions of dollars of state funds because she knows he is the person who attacked her. The statement did not object to the motion. Gannett said in the court filing, Moses has not responded. The 1987 attack, which the lawyer wrote still impacts the victim, was particularly violent. The attacker broke into the woman's apartment while she slept. He then beat her, dragged her and raped her. She suffered 6 bone fractures to the face and lost vision in one eye. But the case against Moses raised numerous questions and further several dramatic twists and turns. His accuser identified him as the attacker after a dream while medicated and hospitalized because of injuries received in the incident. Then police destroyed DNA evidence because it could be tested. Later, another inmate confessed to the crime but recanted. Moses maintained his innocence from the outset, refusing plea bargain offer to him over the years. In 2015, a judge granted Moses a new trial based on newly discovered evidence, and in 2016, a jury found him not guilty. And that's what we have for you on this very video. Remember, before you leave, to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos and content on this very channel. This is Frank Speaks signing out, saying thank you for always visiting us.